Sí, buenos días de nuevo y bienvenidos a esta segunda. Buenos días de nuevo y bienvenidos a esta segunda ponencia de esta mañana 6 de octubre en el marco de Campus Yuste, el curso de verano sobre políticas culturales europeas frente a los retos de la integración, en el panel sobre el valor de la cultura en el proceso de integración europea, de los procesos institucionales a la acción del sector cultural y la sociedad civil. Tenemos en este momento con nosotros al profesor Frans de Ruitter, que además de ser músico de profesión, ha dirigido varios festivales, profesor de la Facultad de Creatividad y Artes Escénicas de la Universidad de Leuven y que además ha sido presidente durante al menos 2 mandatos y es miembro de la del International Music Council. Es además presidente de la Casa Europea de la Cultura, con sede en Bruselas, también miembro del Grupo Estratégico de Solve for Europe, de Un Alma para Europa, y además una persona especialmente activa en todo lo que es la promoción de redes de la sociedad civil en el campo de la cultura, intentando dar ese valor a la cultura para que sea uno de los motores para la integración europea. Sin más dilación, profesor Ruitter, bienvenido a estas paredes de Yuste, and the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you for understanding my delay and the speaker to take my place at 9 o'clock already. Like Steve Austin yesterday, I'm first going to tell you what I am going to do. I will read something, like many speakers do, from a text, but I will also improvise, and I will also sometimes interrupt for an exertion. An exertion is a general thought which has to do with the subject and the theme. It's a bit outside, but in the end will prove to be of great importance. I've decided to say a few words on one of the organizations where I've been responsible for a number of years. You see that in my biography, and Miguel has just listed it, the International Music Council. And I will read something on what the use and the aims and objectives of these organizations are and were, and then see how this works out, which is then an example for the role and the position of a lot of other networks and the possibilities and impossibilities in a society, as I called it, in deconstruction. The International Music Council is a worldwide membership-based professional organization dedicated to the promotion of the value of music in the life of all peoples. The mission is to develop sustainable music sectors, to create awareness about the value of music, to make music matter in all social fabric, and to uphold basic music rights in all countries. There are, by all means, other organizations on the field of dance and theater and visual arts who can be compared with this music organization. So in the place of music, you can also use other disciplines. The organization was founded in 1949 at the request of the Director General of UNESCO as a non-governmental advisory body to the Agency of Musical Matters. It's still based at the UNESCO headquarters in Paris, although in disapproved barracks with no air, and functions today independently as an international NGO maintaining formal partnership with UNESCO. In the course of its existence, IMC has developed into a highly influential network advocating for appropriate policies and practices aimed at strengthening the work of its members and partners worldwide. The organization is present in 150 countries on all continents, with national music councils and international, regional, and national music organizations, as well as specialized organizations. Through its members, IMC is an organization of members with members with members with members. So if you go down, IMC has direct access to over 1,000 organizations and 200 million persons eager to develop and share knowledge and experience on diverse aspects of musical life. The core values are embodied in a set of 5 music rights, which have been guiding since their proclamation in 2001. This was one of my heritage issues when I left the presidency, the work of the IMC and its members. The first right is musical expression for all, which means for all children and adults to express themselves musically in all freedom. The second right is musical education for all children and adults to learn musical languages and skills. The third right is musical involvement for all children and adults to have access to musical involvement through participation, listening, creation, and information. The fourth right is opportunities for musical artists, for all artists to develop their artistry and communicate through all media with proper facilities at their disposal. And to close, the fifth right, recognition for musical artists, for all musical artists to obtain just recognition and remuneration for their work. Now you might think, why is this needed? Why did we formulate these rights? The problem is that these rights were not in place when we phrased these sentences. In a lot of parts of the world, there is no access, there is no education, there is not the possibility to be involved, and there is a very low-level opportunity for musical artists. That was the reason to phrase these rights and to lobby, to advocate that these rights were to be implemented in the years after 2001. All these rights emanate directly from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the UN-adopted International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. IMC has put these rights into action in various ways, through mapping, identifying examples from global music practice, operationalizing the rights through concrete projects, and promoting them. How can they make for a better world, a better musical world, and how can music make for a better world? Here comes my first exertion. Recently on Dutch television, a journalist who was for many years a reporter in Greece just on political matters and the daily news, was able to enter a refugee camp in Thessaloniki illegally, because journalists are not admitted to refugee camps. But through contacts and dressing up a little bit like an actress, etc., she was able to go there. She found 2,000 refugees from Greece in a fabric which was closed down 20 years ago. It was a fabric of asbestos. The fabric was closed 20 years ago because it was extremely dangerous and very unhealthy. She found that at this moment, 2,000 refugees from Syria are sitting in this fabric and damaging their health in an enormous way. Let's keep that in mind when we go further. It's about back to the 5 musical rights. How do we operationalize them? And a few examples. IMC runs the African Music Development Program, which contributes to the professionalization of the African music sector with all kinds of training opportunities, workshops, seminars, for example, also academies like here in Yuste. There is a rostrum on contemporary creation to try to strengthen this sector in Europe and beyond, to develop audiences, promote new music, enhance the capacity and skills of radio and television professionals, and inspire cooperation between musicians, higher music education institutions, and broadcasting companies. And then there is an important task on the area of music and resilience support, which aims to contribute to the development of new strategies for specialized training with a view to making high-level training course accessible to as many potential beneficiaries as possible throughout Europe and beyond. And the specific area of specialization is psychosocial music interventions with under-resourced, deprived, and marginalized communities, targeting primarily populations of refugees and asylum seekers, which are on a dramatic increase both within Europe and worldwide. The rights are promoted by the mainstreaming of culture in the development agenda, the free circulation of artists, the value of the diversity of musical expressions, the importance of taking into account the voice of civil society, the need to safeguard intangible cultural heritage, the importance of arts education, intercultural dialogue, youth empowerment and participation. So far, the reading of a nice and decent text on what the IMC has done, does, and will try to do in future. This all sounds very beautiful, but there is, I would say, a limited success. One of the dramas is the drama of UNESCO, which is in the meantime, a totally politicized organization. As you know, there are big troubles in countries paying their fees for various reasons, which means that at this very moment there is not $1 nor euro nor whatsoever available for any program. So if you want to cooperate with UNESCO, you have to bring your own money, which was very different in the past. If you see sometimes programs in UNESCO, they are mainly funded by so-called extra budgetary funds. So some countries, and especially China is very strong there, can buy UNESCO to organize activities. They pump 2 million euros or dollars into a fund and say, well, this is our contribution, so we now organize with you a conference on something. So this is a horrible situation because UNESCO is typically an example that if the organization was not there, you should invent it. You should, of course, invent an international organization for culture and science and education that will be needed. But now it's there, it doesn't function anymore. So we are not able to, this organization runs in a decent way. That's one of the major difficulties also for the IMC to function in the way as it should be done. So the outcomes of all these beautiful words I just quoted is relatively in doubt. And what is the context of all of this? We live in a society, and what I learned from Latin a long time ago, society, sotius, brother, ally, society of people, which is in the meantime completely divided. On the one side, the chancellors, the angry, it has all been discussed already yesterday also, and those who are afraid to be chancellors in the future. And on the other side, the successful. This has tremendous consequences for participation. On the one side, there's a group of people who only express opinions. On the other side, there are still people having arguments. Research has shown that the main element, the main factor in this division in society has to do with education. The more important that an organization like UNESCO would be there and be effective in this matter. The low or no educated and the highly educated. This is the core of the problem in our divided society. And as long as we are not able to solve that, all of us, especially you, young people, postgraduate students, on the work floor, in your local situations, circumstances, we will not come much further. But there's of course also another problem. We are here sitting in the sector of the arts and culture, cultural networks, arts networks. There also we see a kind of lack of togetherness, lack of connection. A lot of things are, and organizations and people are divided. There is in effect no effective, common, broadly based action to encourage the importance of arts and culture for society. Yesterday, Steve Austin, and I quote him again, said, well, the sector should talk more to the people. And they should know what is playing there, not what they want. Well, you can ask what they want, but what is a means to communicate? I have a very funny example of a hopeless opera company with a symphony orchestra, etc. And they tried to communicate, it is in Germany, with their audiences. And they say, well, we have some free tickets available, so you can come to our concerts for a Mahler symphony. The first 50 people who appear at the box office in a motor driver's costume, Harley Davidson or Hells Angels, they get a free ticket. So just imagine on what level some organizations in a hopeless way try to communicate with their audiences. I do not think that's the best way to do it. There is in the cultural sector a lot going on with personal ambitions, power. Power always leads to corruption, as we know. There's a lot of competition. Who is more important than I am? I'm more important than you are. We see when the circus of subsidy providing and advising takes place, that people just swallow each other and say, well, don't give the money to him, give it to me. The question is, who's member of whom? We had some trouble in the IMC because the educationalist and the ethnomusicologist said, well, the IMC as a worldwide organization should be member of us. And we said, well, IMC represents all the music sectors, so also ethnomusicology and also music education, so it's more logic that you are with us. The discussion was finished. It did not work out. So this is all about competence and power and who is more important. And that does not make a very good impression and does not help very much our sector as well. We see also in the Brussels area a lot of networks competing for small amounts of money and subsidies and struggling around. But one of the most worst examples is the whole situation, for example, on the intellectual property rights. The battle between artist organizations, associations, the internet providers, the collecting societies, the legal systems, already for, I think, 50, 60 years, there is no way, well, they talk with each other, but they disagree all the time, which simply does not make a good impression. Recently, in a couple of, I have here a newsletter from October 4, so that's recent. It reads, the EU Commission presents a set of new copyright measures as part of its single market strategy. So the European Commission is starting something, and then in the middle of the text it says, the authors group the European Composers and Songwriters Association, for example, has welcomed the proposal because the key issue of creators' weak bargaining position in their contractual relationships and fair remuneration, one of the musical rights, is here at stake. The open access movement, on the other hand, has strongly criticized. So Europe tries to solve something, and immediately all the parties are struggling again, beating each other and bringing the whole dossier not very much forward. So also this makes not a very good impression in when we want to bring our society a bit further. Exertion 2. A recent report from UNICEF tells us that at this moment, 50 million children are in a refugee situation worldwide. 50 million children. Please keep that in mind when we talk about a society in deconstruction and what cultural networks can do. What can the cultural sector offer? Do we have answers? Every now and then you see a good example. It's a pity that some good examples are not getting a follow-up, and they are just there. But the crisis is indeed very deep. Big groups in society have just disgust against the professional politicians. And there are all kinds of reasons to have this disgust. The short list is the banking and insurance crisis, all the time maximization of profit, the breaking of promises, politicians saying, if you vote for me, I will do this. And they forget that this is not possible because they have normally to make compromises. So you better say, if you vote for me, my program is as such, and I will try to realize as much of that as possible. But not, this will happen. Politicians sign treaties, but they do not implement them. We have treaties on pollution and environment, and one sees that these treaties in quite a few instances are not signed. It's also quite unbelievable that in Brussels, 27 prime ministers or specialist ministers in, could it be agriculture or economics, sign agreements with the signature. And when they come home, they say, oh no, that was not the right idea. I in fact disagree with that. It makes the discussion not very fertile in solving problems. The solutions which I don't have, but I have a few paths, and you are very important in realizing that kind of solutions, is in the first place to be much more together. Having run the conservatoire for 21 years, completely international, we had a Baroque orchestra with 52 nationalities. There was no struggle in that group, 52 nationalities. They were just making music in a fantastic way, which creates an atmosphere where these things like angriness and hatred and being divided doesn't play a role anymore. So this kind of good examples could help. Yesterday, Steve Austin mentioned also the vereniging, the association we established in '92, where we at one point brought within 2 months 130 Dutch arts institutions together to plea for the good case. It was a question of being together. Not that everyone agreed with everything, but we were together, and it worked out quite well. If you see, and you can criticize perhaps some aspects of it, the famous El Sistema system of youth orchestras in Venezuela, which is now going further on the world on the other names and with the same points of departure. It's a wonderful way how you see how a society, when confronted in an amicable and profitable way with arts and culture, in this case music, there is something changing in the society. I have walked in the slums of Caracas, to the rehearsal places where the young kids came with instruments. And to be part of that system brought them a kind of pride, and it brought the same pride and happiness also to the parents, which was really, and I've seen that, and it was also told by me by the leadership, could change the mentality in certain parts of these horrible surroundings in that big city. So to be together is one of the most important things. The other thing, and I'm coming back to these rights, because these rights are not for nothing formulated as they are, is the still very weak access to culture through lack of education. And lack of education, also education in the arts, is the core of the situation of inequality in society. It's my vision that every child, and that's indeed in these rights, which I just read out, it always says the right for all children and adults. So it pays special attention to children. And that's, I think, of vital importance when we speak about how arts and culture can be brought forward into society, that we have to start as soon as possible, as young as possible. I give an example. In the meantime, not so little son of 16, when he was 11, still in primary school, his teacher, female teacher, got pregnant, and she was replaced. And to my big astonishment, after 2 weeks, I saw 12 kids with a guitar going into the classroom. What's happening here? So what's on? Yeah. This teacher, this replacer, this stand-in, he is an amateur musician, and he plays the guitar. And he talked about it and said, well, if you, after the class, when all is finished, I'm available between 4 and 6, and if you bring a guitar, I can teach you a little bit of the guitar. So 12 kids came with a guitar. So it really works. For children, anything is possible. You can induce anything to them, and it changes them. So when the baby was born and the lady came back, the guitars disappeared from the class. So why is that? No reason, of course, but it happened. Exertion number 3. The morning I traveled to here, on the news of 5 o'clock in the morning, because I had to write something down, there was the following message. Worldwide, 385 million children, 385 million children live in poverty, which means that they are in a surrounding where the average amount available per person is $1.60. 385 million children. I want to finish with some advice and asking your cooperation, not here specifically on the spot, but nevertheless. Let's do an action in a key central point of what I find of greatest importance, that we work on youth, childhood, early childhood, and to bring arts and culture in the broadest sense of the world. I spoke a lot about music, but it is about anything, visual art and literature and whatsoever. That we confront, that we make available for our younger generations arts and culture in a decent, fashionable, effective way. And I think this could be the beginning of a change of thinking and a change in society. A recent message, also in the newspaper, was that in Italy, Prime Minister Matteo Renzi said as follows, that I now translate from Dutch in English. Every child, you cannot call an 18-year-old is more a young adult, but nevertheless, every young person of 18 years gets €500 from the Italian government in vouchers to spend in musea, buy books, go to theater and concerts. Renzi, I quote, "This action is an answer to Islam radicalism. They destroy statues, we love art. They destroy books, we are the country of libraries. They want terror, and our answer is culture." So take this message also from Matteo Renzi, Prime Minister of Italy, quite recently. And I think it is better to start a bit earlier than the year 18. But I would say that all of us, but especially you, the younger generation, and I'm not speaking about highbrow legislation or whatsoever, and in every country I know it's arranged in a different way. There are different ways of how laws are organized and education is organized. But it would be a huge task for you to see that in your local workplace, in your local city, your region, you start a campaign for early childhood education in the arts. And I think that would work out in a very positive way. If Hugo de Greef arrives in time, and he will speak this afternoon, we are with him, and he's especially dealing with a resolution for culture, which is an instrument in the Brussels sphere to ask governments to spend certain amounts of money in this respect. We should also phrase a resolution for arts education and try at all levels. Of course, the networks, the applicable networks have an important task there, but also you on the work floor, and I know from personal experience that you have to do the work individual on a personal basis in your local community to work on this aspect. This is my advice and my hope, and I hope to have inspired you a bit to work on this matter. And don't forget the horrible figures I've given in my exertions, because the world is in a very, very deep crisis, and we must find solutions to slowly get out of that. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias. Bueno, tras este planteamiento de la cara y la cruz de nuestra sociedad, de nuestra realidad, y también agradecerle propuestas de luces y el ánimo que nos inspira a través de ejemplos concretos en torno a las posibilidades que podemos tener a nivel individual, como finalmente nos ha manifestado, pues se abre un turno de debate, de preguntas, cuando quieran.
Hola, buenos días. Quería comentarle simplemente una observación en el sentido de que al final de su intervención, cuando estaba comentando del hecho de que el Islam destruye los monumentos y que Europa o la civilización occidental, o en este caso por oposición la religión católica, pues los protege o da vales a los chicos para que los gasten en actividades culturales. Creo que hay que hacer un esfuerzo por evitar esta dicotomía o estas generalizaciones que hacen bastante daño, sobre todo a la cultura islámica. Simplemente eso.
Yes, I can imagine it was a quote from Matteo Renzi in the framework of his action to provide these €500. And I think it was a kind of polemic statement at that time.
Buenos días. Yo quería preguntar, la medida que acabas de mencionar de Italia y los vales, si realmente allí funciona, porque en España vales como tal no existen, pero sí que muchos museos cuentan con el día gratuito, que sería para todos los públicos. Suelen existir programas entre colegios y museos para que puedan ir, ¿no? Y también el sistema de bibliotecas, que por lo general es bastante positivo, pero yo veo que no existe un uso real por parte de personas adolescentes, jóvenes en general o mayores de 18, que era la edad que mencionaba.
Well, what I quoted is just from the newspaper from 2 weeks ago. So I have not reports on the success of this operation. But indeed, to have easy access at certain days the year that people easily can come is a means to start a cooperation and introduction. So all kind of measures. And that's what I said, there are a great number of good examples. I could have listed hundreds more. Only we should learn from good examples and from good case studies and cases. And not imitate them, but use them in our own surroundings in the most appropriate way. So we should learn from each other's good endeavors in this matter.
¿Alguna otra cuestión? Sí.
It is not a question. I just want to comment on this last topic about the vouchers. They're similar to the Renzi initiative. There are some cases across Europe, in Belgium, by the way, in several cities, in Vienna and so on. Now, the thing is, the difference between free entrance and vouchers is that vouchers push people, and the free museums and libraries don't pull enough. So sometimes the difference is made by pushing. So if you have in your pockets 500 euros or the equivalent in other places, it moves those people who otherwise wouldn't care, wouldn't get closer to the libraries or the concert halls or the museums.
I can't see you, but I think that's true. And yeah, this all might help to get your 43% of yesterday a bit down. But indeed it helps if you have money in the pocket to do this.
Buenos días, soy Yarina de la Universidad de Santiago de Compostela. En relación con su discurso, yo quería poner en común con todos que es un tema que cultural y patrimonialmente nos preocupa mucho, es atraer al público que no tiene interés o no tiene la educación suficiente como para llegar por sí solo a la cultura. Pero quería hacer énfasis en que existe un público que sí, bueno, distintos tipos de público, pero se podrían englobar en un mismo grupo, que sí que tienen ganas de conocer, ganas de saber, ganas de educarse y socialmente quiero pensar que de manera involuntaria, por falta de educación, no les estamos permitiendo el acceso a la cultura. Y me refiero, porque es mi tema de investigación, a las personas con algún tipo de discapacidad, que una gran mayoría, un porcentaje muy alto de personas que se ven impedidas, y somos prácticamente nosotros los que les impedimos ese acceso, quieren, pero no pueden. Y sin embargo, la preocupación general es de esa gente que no quiere acceder a la cultura, que no tiene un interés tangible por la cultura.
And why don't they have access in your study? Why don't they seem not to have access?
No me refiero a que no tiene acceso a la cultura. Evidentemente, todos los museos están abiertos a todo tipo de público. Pero, por poner un ejemplo muy claro, una persona que tiene problemas en la visión, una exposición pictórica va a tener muchos inconvenientes, muchas trabas. Yo llegué a la conclusión, y yo me di cuenta que sí es posible, que se puede hacer mediante otras experiencias sensoriales que no tienen que ser el canal visual, pero evidentemente de manera individual y no tienen esa posibilidad. Es a lo que me refiero. Que no tenemos esa preocupación de buscar herramientas para solucionar esos problemas que en realidad son mínimos dentro de... Gracias.
Yeah, well, there are, in the meantime, of course, educational programs also for visually impaired people in museums where they can go through Braille, read what is printed, but also with staff members of the education department explaining them what is there, but what they cannot see. So these programs exist, and again, that is an example of a good example, which should be carried out also in other places.
Hola, ahora sí. Quería hacer más que una pregunta, una reflexión al respecto de arte, cultura y fundaciones. Hay una cosa que me preocupa especialmente, y es que en los últimos años las fundaciones que antes se dedicaban a la cultura y arte han modificado sus líneas de actuación, prácticamente eliminando lo que es arte, no cultura en sí, pero sí arte, para destinar todo eso a problemáticas sociales. O sea, cuando vino la gran crisis en España, por ejemplo, existía la Fundación Arte y Tecnología de Telefónica, desapareció el nombre de arte, ahora se llama Fundación Telefónica, y ya prácticamente no dedican dinero a lo que serían las iniciativas artísticas y culturales. La Casa Encendida, lo mismo, Caixa Forum, exactamente igual. Entonces, a mí me preocupa especialmente que la sensibilidad de las instituciones, sobre todo las privadas, que son las que tienen mucho miedo de no estar a la altura de lo que es políticamente correcto. Y parece ser que destinar dinero a arte hoy no es políticamente correcto y hay que dedicarlo directamente a la ayuda social, al problema social. Yo creo que esto es algo que nosotros, los especialistas, los que hemos trabajado toda la vida, creyendo que el arte no transforma el mundo, pero sí que puede incidir en el cambio de percepción de las personas, y yo creo que cambiar la percepción de las personas es avanzar hacia un mundo mejor, deberíamos, de alguna manera, pública y privada e institucionalmente, apostar por una especie de reclamación del regreso a que el arte, las humanidades y la cultura pueden precisamente a medio y largo plazo, no a corto plazo, hacer un trabajo incluso más poderoso que ir tapando agujeros en el tema social, económico, en toda esta brutal crisis que efectivamente urge apoyar, ¿no? Esta es una reflexión de la que me gustaría compartir con usted para ver qué opina al respecto.
Well, I cannot agree more, and this kind of sloppiness which comes in and being politically correct. And well, there are of course examples where I can imagine that companies or foundations, why would you not invest in art education? Yeah. To buy a grand piano for a concert hall of 150,000 euros, that's something different. I can imagine, well, perhaps that's not anymore our first priority, but invest in people, especially in young people. That is, for me, the core of the matter still, and it is I do not know the situation in Spain well enough, but it's regrettable that this has happened, that it is short-sighted.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Rebeca. Aquí estoy. Yo quisiera agradecerle, pero además sinceramente, esta promoción que ha hecho de la educación en las artes desde la infancia temprana. Creo que esto es un avance porque genera, o creo que genera a nivel individual y a nivel colectivo, pensamientos, libres pensamientos, otras alternativas, cuestionar el pensamiento hegemónico. Y quisiera que desde este espacio, que creo que es un referente a nivel del Estado, llegara el jalón de orejas que toca a este país con la modificación que han hecho a la ley de enseñanza, donde nos están recortando estas asignaturas. Se están convirtiendo en asignaturas periféricas en pro de otro tipo de asignaturas donde vamos en bloque, vamos cuadrando y lo único que genera es binarismos, genera conflictos y pocos espacios de enseñanza y de aprendizaje mutuo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you for the nice and friendly words. There is also kind of a big wave in history all the time. There were a number of countries where this, for example, music education was strongly a governmental policy. I'm thinking about Hungary and Estonia especially. There is an incredible choral culture in Estonia. Very famous choirs are coming there, conductors. And recently I heard that they are building it down instead of keeping, so something is working well and then it will, like in your case, it stopped like this. In some other countries where it did not exist, in Germany, it's getting up a little bit. So these waves of time is, well, that's the situation of our world. It would only be much better not to have these waves, and when something functions and there is a system in place and it pays out, it works, it has its effect, to keep it going. And if you criticize perhaps some aspect, you have to improve that system, but not give it up and bringing it down the drain. But thank you for your comment.
Muy bien, muchas gracias. Muchas gracias. A continuación, continuamos. ¿Dónde está?